Welcome to the Kingdom in its Stories, this particular edition. And we're delighted to have Jeff Cox with us today. And we're going to be interviewing Jeff. But before we begin the interview, I just want to say that the motive and the reason we do this broadcast is to interview people who can stimulate our hearts and our minds to think more broadly about how Jesus can use us as his hands and feet in the places where we live and serve and work. And Jeff, welcome to the Kingdom of Stories. And Jeff and I had a chance to talk a little bit yesterday and get acquainted. And today we can actually see each other on the Zoom call. So Jeff, welcome. And it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Jeff, start off, if you would, by telling us, what do you do? What is it do you think that motivated us to contact you and say, could we interview you for these stories?
I'm not exactly sure, but I do coach baseball and wrestling and football at a local high school, and club sponsor at the high school for the FCA Club, or Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I also work with veterans who have PTS and also TBI in the Valley.
Oh, wow, that's good. That was a really good short one. Give us an elevator speech, Jeff, and tell us, who is Jeff Cox?
Well, I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, lived here all my life, except for a year and a half in San Marcos, California, where I did some training. But I graduated from high school here, went to Grand Canyon University. But in my senior year of high school, I was very depressed and had suicidal thoughts. And so I had decided to kill myself and was driving my car down Greenway Road in front of my high school. I was going to drive into a power pole. And I heard a voice in my head say, "Don't kill yourself," and which was strange. I had never heard a voice before or since. And I went home. And a couple of days later, one of the girls at my high school was involved in the Campus Crusade for Christ high school ministry at our school.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but she invited me to a meeting where they were talking about love, dating, and relationships. And the reason I was going to kill myself was I felt like nobody loved me. Wow. I felt like there was nobody who I could really trust. My friends were not really good people. And I went to the meeting, heard the gospel of Jesus Christ for the first time, and decided.
You were in high school.
I was in high school.
I was a senior in high school. Never heard the gospel before.
Not that I remember. I mean, I think people tried to share it with me at different times. I had been in a Bible study once, but I didn't understand what was going on. So I figured I was going to kill myself 2 days ago. I might as well try to give God a try and see if he'd make a difference. And he did.
Wow. Okay. And that's the story.
That's pretty much the story. I met my wife through the Campus Crusades high school ministry, and she went to a different school. And then we started dating for 3 years while I was going to college at Grand Canyon University. It was actually called Grand Canyon College at the time. And we got married the end of my junior year, excuse me. And we have 4 children together and 4 grandchildren.
Wow. Being a grandpa myself, I know what a joy that is.
Yes.
Honestly, it wasn't until the later years of my life where I am a grandpa and I realized this is the reason God created me. The major reason is the opportunity to leave a legacy in my kids and my grandkids. And, that's a shock for those of us who grow up in ministry and we think that's the most important thing, rather than realizing that the most important thing that God made us for is to have kids and to leave a legacy of godliness in their lives. So how old are your grandkids, Jeff?
Well, I have one that's 17. He lives in California. And then I have one that is 8, one that is 6, and one that is 4.
Okay. Wow. What a wonderful spread.
Yeah.
Well, tell us, tell us some stories about uh, what do you do professionally? What do you do for a living? I'm assuming you have to live, you have to put bread and butter on the table. And then how does that fit into this ministry that God has called you to?
Well, when I was in high school, there was a man named Bill Strickland who discipled me after I chose to follow Jesus, and he started helping me to grow in my faith. And one day, he actually taught me how to share my faith, and I started sharing my faith with my friends. And I had 4 or 5 guys who um, I had led to the Lord, and I kept bringing them to him, saying, "Hey, what are you gonna do with these guys?" And he's like, "I'm not gonna do anything with them. You do something with them." And he taught
Yeah.
me how to disciple people. And so I started discipling my friends. And one day I said, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "This is what I do." I said, "You get paid to tell high school students about Jesus?" He said, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, how can I get that job?" And he said, "Well, you got to go to college. And then after you get your 4-year degree," I said, "In what?" He goes, "It doesn't matter. And then you can join the staff of Campus Crusade." So that became my plan. So I went to Grand Canyon, got a degree in Bible, and then I went, I got married, and my wife and I decided that's where God had called us. So we were on staff with Campus Crusade's high school ministry for 25 years, working in primarily in the Phoenix area. And so I still continue to do that. I'm just not with Campus Crusade anymore.
Okay. For those who are listening and watching and who don't understand the financial implications of what that means, does that mean you join Campus Crusade and they pay you? Or do you have to raise support? Or yeah,
That's a
tell us.
great that's a great question. No, what it meant was I had to quit my job. I had to go to staff training in Colorado, where I didn't know if I had a job with Campus Crusade.
Right.
And then after they said, "Yes, we accept you," now you need to raise your own support. So I started making phone calls to people I knew and asking them to give me names of other people. And in about 6 months, our support was raised, and we began working at Sunny Slope High School in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow. 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the missions community, I know that that's a pretty short time.
It was miraculous.
Yeah. And isn't God miraculous? I
Yes,
mean,
he is.
that's, that goes without saying when you're talking about God, but for us to realize it, then we say, wow, God, thank you. Thank you for doing that. So you've been in full-time ministry then since college?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Okay. Is it possible to be in full-time ministry if you're not being paid to do what you're doing by a group like Harvest or Campus Crusade?
I'm not sure. I would think it would be possible. It just depends on where you get your money from. I think working in a regular job and still doing what I do is very possible. I think it just takes a few hours a week to actually impact somebody and make a
Right,
difference in their
right.
lives. Yeah.
Jeff, tell us a story. We'll start off with two stories. Tell us one story about the kids you're working with in high school that just show how God has used you in the life of those kids.
Sure.
And then also tell us a story about veterans of PCSD.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I was coaching wrestling, and it was during the COVID shutdowns and all that kind of a thing. So I only had about 8 young men that I was teaching how to wrestle. They were all beginners, and I just really felt like the Lord wanted me to share more with them because they were living in fear of this disease or virus or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And so I said, you know what? We had to wear masks on the wrestling mats, and we had to wash everything. It was kind of weird. And then I said, guys, I wanted to invite you to get some pizza and explain to you about our club we have on campus called Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And anybody that wants to come can come, but it's not mandatory.
Yeah.
So the next day I showed up. I told them, meet me at QT, which is around the corner from our school. And lo and behold, all 8 guys showed up for this time, and I told them it's about spiritual things and God and that kind of thing. So if you're not interested in that, don't worry about it. And they all showed up, and I had my wife bring some pizza. And she's a great helper in everything we do in ministry. And so she brought the pizza over. I opened the tailgate of my truck in the parking lot of QT and shared the
QT is
gospel.
a gas station.
Yes, QT is a gas station.
Okay.
And I opened up my tailgate, put the pizza on there, fed them pizza, told them, shared with them my personal story of knowing God, my God story. And then I told them about how to know Jesus and gave them an opportunity to invite him into their lives and take control. And lo and behold, 7 of the 8 guys actually indicated that they wanted to do that. And
this is from one time at QT.
Yes.
On the tailgate of your truck.
In the parking lot of all
Wow.
things.
Wow.
We couldn't meet on campus because of the pandemic stuff and all that. So it was very interesting. Had to get creative, so to speak. And from that, I have a group of guys that I'm meeting with. Only 2 of those 7 actually are still involved. They are Jeff and Ralph. But because of them bringing their friends and sharing their faith, we now have Jeff, Edward, Julian, Ralph, Jason, Genesis, Jesse, Tyler, and Jaden. Jaden recently graduated last year, and now he's in the United States Marine Corps, stationed in Yuma. So,
what year was this tailgate party at QT?
It was 2021.
Okay, all right. So it was a couple of years.
Yes.
So, and now you've got how many guys that you're working with like that?
I think 8 or 9 that I'm working right now.
Yeah. And how often do you meet?
We meet at least once a week. We go over to Wendy's down the corner from the school. And I buy him some hamburgers and French fries, and we break bread together and pray and read the Bible and talk about obeying Jesus, because Jesus commanded us to make disciples and to teach them to obey all that he's commanded, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So we try to baptize the guys. Last year, 2 of the guys I baptized at our church was one of the greatest moments of my life.
Oh boy, I bet. Yeah. So, before we go to the PTSD story, I want you to tell me how would you define discipleship in just a short sense or two? What does that mean?
I think it means to transfer the life of Jesus Christ into other people through the power of the Holy Spirit and leave the results to God. It's spending time with them, living it out in front of them, encouraging them, helping them to read the Bible, to connect with Jesus personally, to learn how to pray and to obey him.
Okay, good. So it's more than a course.
Yes, it's life on life.
It's life on life. Yeah, I think so many of our listeners come from backgrounds where discipleship means a course, that you go through, and you go through booklets, and you're supposed to be a disciple after you go through those. And I'm sure you've seen that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And realize that that's not discipleship.
Yes, many of these young people don't have fathers or good father figure, and I'm kind of like the grandpa figure.
Yeah, great. How old are you, Jeff?
I'm 60.
You're 60. You're just a young guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't feel young.
Well, yeah, but compared to me, you are young. So anyway, tell us about the military side of what you do, and tell us a story that illustrates that.
About 10 years.
And Jeff, before you go on, I do need to tell people who are watching and listening that this is the Kingdom and its Stories, and we're interviewing today a brother by the name of Jeff, and Jeff Cox, not related to the internet Cox, I assume.
No.
Yeah, that's a good thing, depending on who you talk to and what server people are using. But anyway, we in this program, we try to interview people who can tell us how God is using them to be Jesus' hands and feet. And the hope is to stimulate us, those who are listening, to consider how we can be better examples, or how we can actually put into practice what it means to be Jesus' hands and feet. Okay, Jeff, over to you again.
Well, about 10 years ago, a gentleman that I barely knew, kind of an acquaintance, called me on the phone and said, "Hey, can I have breakfast with you? I want to talk to you about something." His name was Scott. And I said, "Sure," not knowing what I was heading into. And for the next 30 minutes at breakfast, he started to tell me about the fact that he was an Army veteran, flew Apache attack helicopters in Afghanistan, crashed one. And when his night vision went out, and he was basically blind at night, and he had PTSD as a result of what happened to him in battle. And I listened very patiently, and I said, well, "What is it that you feel bad about?" And he said, "Well, I feel guilty for for killing people, and being elated about it." He said, "I got excited, sometimes when I would do my job." And I said, "Well, I don't know much about battle. I've never been in the military. I don't know anything about PTSD." But I said, all of a sudden, I'm thinking of this story. And I said, "Have you ever heard of the story of David and Goliath?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, I've got 9 years, or I think he said 8 years of parochial school. So yeah, I remember David and Goliath."
Right.
And I said, "Well, do you remember what happened when David killed the Philistine, or what happened?" He said, "Well, tell me what you mean." And I said, "Well, he hit him with a rock, and he fell down. He went over and grabbed the guy's sword and cut his head off. And then I see he reached up and grabbed that head and stuck it up. And I think he was celebrating the fact that his, teenager just killed a 9-foot giant."
Right.
And I said, "I think he felt pretty elated." And he goes, "Wow, I never thought of it like that." And then he told me that he felt shame because in combat they have rules of engagement. They're not allowed to just go shoot people. The people have to fire on them first. And
Right.
over there in Afghanistan, the warriors don't look like warriors. They look like sheep herders and goat herders.
Yes.
And he said, so we didn't know who was who. And sometimes they would fire an inert flare in the direction of somebody to see if they were bad people or not.
Right.
And sometimes they'd pull out RPGs and things like that and start shooting at them. Then they were allowed to protect the boots on the ground by shooting those folks. And he said, "I felt like I was picking a fight, and I feel guilty about that." And I said, "Well, are you familiar with the story of Jonathan and his armor bearer?" He's like, "No, I don't remember that one. Tell me about it." So I explained to him that they went up to the Philistines and picked a fight because they were supposed to be fighting them, but nobody was fighting.
Right.
And God gave them a great victory that day as they fought back to back on a hill, on a mountainside, and they killed 20 people. And all of a sudden, God gave a great victory to the armies of Israel that day over the Philistines. And he just looked at me and said, "Man, you've helped me more in the last 30 minutes than 6 or 7 years at the VA."
Wow.
And I said, I haven't helped you at all. I said, "If anything helped you, it's because God's word and God is helping you." And I think he just put those things in my mind. And, and so that forged a relationship. And I began discipling him on the condition that he would help other veterans. And now we've got groups in Payson, all over the state, helping veterans who have PTSD, TBI, and they're suffering.
What's TBI?
Traumatic brain injury.
Okay, and that comes from a physical.
Yeah, usually from a concussion of some kind.
I see.
You get blown up in an IED or something like that, and you hit your head. You have concussion symptoms, that kind of a thing.
So, how many guys with PTSD do you think God has given you the privilege of ministering to them?
Well, directly, probably about 10 or 15 guys, but Scott is actually helping minister to literally hundreds.
Yeah. Okay. But for you, does that mean just a meeting occasionally, or is that like with your high school kids, a life on a life?
It's more life on life. I help Scott. I'm just still discipling him, helping him grow in his faith and work through his PTSD. And we have a group on Sunday nights that we meet with that are in our area of town. And other than that, I'm one of the leadership members of Bridges to Healing Arizona, which is the group that we're with in helping. We actually started the group within the last year. We're putting a website together and that kind of a thing so that we can try to reach more veterans in the area.
Okay. Are you able to follow through with those guys so that you have an idea of of how they do after you're working with them and counseling with them?
Yeah, the interesting thing about it is once they start going through the combat trauma healing manual that we use, that was developed by the Military Ministry of Crew, they don't really want to leave. They want to keep meeting every week. So we're always meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you're able to see changes in the lives of these guys?
absolutely.
You get it?
Scott was ready to kill himself. He literally had put a pistol
Okay.
in his mouth right before he called me. And
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
and now he's a different person. I mean, he was a mess, and
Sounds
he's
like a
really good.
guy by the name of Jeff who was driving toward a power pole.
Pretty much, we were in the same boat in many different decades.
Yeah, right. Okay. And and can you quickly tell us a story of one of these guys with PTSD, that how Christ has changed their lives?
Well, yeah, there's a gentleman named Mike who was in the United States Marine Corps. He was in Vietnam. He was on the flight crew in Vietnam, and in his job one day, they friendly, I don't know if it was our Air Force or our Navy, bombed the airstrip that they were working on, and they're doing the flight crew stuff, and he had incredible anger issues. I mean, just fly off the handle, want to fight you, kind of stuff, and
Was our own military
bombed the yeah
bombing them.
bombed yeah.
Okay.
And
Right.
you see a lot of things when you're on the flight line. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure there are helicopters coming in with people who aren't in good shape and things like that, but dreams, recurring dreams, a lot of flashbacks and things happen. And Mike has been coming for quite a few years now, and have seen a remarkable changes in him. He's so much more calm and at peace. He's able to work through a lot of the things that he's dealt with.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. If you had a minute or so to talk to those who are listening who aren't employed, by Fellowship of Christian Athletes or Campus Crusade, just the kind of regular guys who are holding down a regular job, what would be your advice to them, in terms of being able to reach out to high school kids or people who are going through incredibly difficult emotional experiences like those who have how do you say it?
PTSD.
PTSD. How what would your counsel to them be?
Well, I may be alone in this, but I feel like the command to
Two
go and
minutes.
make disciples wasn't
Yes.
just for people who get paid to do it. It was for all believers to go and make disciples. And so I think if we're going to be a disciple, we need to obey Jesus first of all, and that's all I'm doing. Even though it's my life work, it's my calling. But
Right.
I have seen plenty of people, including these teenagers that I'm working with and these veterans. They are making disciples. They are doing the same thing, and they can multiply their faith. So my encouragement would be to look around you, ask God, where are the people you want me to reach? Help me to reach them. Help me to teach them how to obey you. Help me to get them baptized. Help me to help them find you and find the forgiveness that you offer and the life change that you offer, and get to work. I mean, it's not hard work. It's trying sometimes.
1 minute.
But it's one of the most rewarding things you would ever do. And even if you only disciple one person your whole life, you're obeying Jesus.
So it's being obedient
Yes, sir.
and encouraging others to be obedient.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that I talk about, when I talk to people about discipleship, is I say, for me, the evidence of discipleship is that you look more and more like Jesus. That's the proof. If somebody's going through a study, but they don't
30
look more like
seconds.
Jesus, then I really question whether or not they're being discipled
I agree.
or that they are discipled. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And I just want to encourage those who are listening to listen to what Jeff has to say. Be obedient and encourage others to follow Jesus as you are following them. And don't do that through a manual, but do it life on life. God bless you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.